Shall we begin?
How shall I position myself?
You may stay just as you are, Mrs. Shelley. And now, look at me. Good. Please hold that pose only and do not move. Think of whatever you like and merely be yourself. If you become tired, simply tell me and we can stop to rest.
This position is still acceptable?
Excellent, milady. As I say, simply be yourself.
Sorry, milady seems officious.
Very good, milady.
Be yourself, milady. Who is that? I am no titled lady. I am daughter of the great Godwin, author. Daughter and namesake of the redoubtable philosopher Mary Wollstonecraft, author. Beloved of Percy Bysshe Shelley, philosopher and poet. Paramour of Shelley, consort, Shelley's strumpet. Mother, I have found myself a young man.
Yes, tell me, what is he like?
Like an angel. His name is Percy Bysshe Shelley, and he is 5 years older, son of a baronet. He has blue eyes and a huge halo of blonde hair into which he sticks his fingers, both hands, and then he shakes his head. Like you and Papa, he is an author and lover of justice. And he is a scandal. At Oxford, he published an essay on the necessity of atheism, and the old dons expelled him. His most respectable father, Sir Timothy, made an arrangement with the school and insisted that Shelley disavow the publication, and he would then be readmitted. But Shelley refused, and so he has been disinherited.
Is he a champion of the poor, then?
He is, Mother. I have seen him return home without his shoes, having given them to a poor woman on the street. He cares nothing for money.
Like your father, then?
Yes. Father has changed. He dwells on money. But my Shelley has offered all his own resources to Father.
Even though he is disinherited?
True, which creates a tension between them. Father is most unkind to Shelley, who has offered himself entirely.
Entirely.
What?
Forgive me, Mrs. Shelley. Would you like to stop and rest? Perhaps see how the portrait progresses?
No. What were you asking me again?
I was saying, people claim that you helped your husband to write the Frankenstein book.
No, Shelley helped me.
Ah, but since the author's name is nowhere given and everyone admits that Shelley did write the introduction, people naturally suspect that he also...
People presume. I wrote Frankenstein. My husband insisted that my idea was compelling, so I was moved to accept his advice about the story in many instances. If a genius gave you advice, if Caravaggio offered you advice on a painting, wouldn't you be a fool not to listen carefully?
So, would you like to be a writer?
All I have ever wanted was to be a writer, to be worthy of the writing family from which I come.
Yes, the well-known Godwin.
And the equally famed Wollstonecraft.
So, do you have a second book in mind, Mrs. Shelley?
Frankenstein was my second book. The first was a travel book that came out a year earlier. Unless you also count the book I wrote when I was 11.
Even more precocious. I certainly hope they saved it.
How do you mean?
Well, the charming productions of childhood are often applauded, but then even more often discarded or misplaced, and so the evidence of young talent is lost.
I believe you misunderstand. The tale was published.
Oh.
You may not realize the difficulties for a woman who signs her name to her writing. When my mother debated the rights of man with Mr. Edmund Burke in print, she was thoroughly praised as long as her arguments were signed anonymous. But as soon as she openly acknowledged that those arguments were written by Mary Wollstonecraft, she was accused of being disguised as a man.
I do beg your pardon, Mrs. Shelley.
It's nothing, really. You are not a well-known artist yourself, am I correct?
Quite true, Mrs.
Perhaps a controversy of your own could help. Why are old men so afraid of Shelley, Mother?
Everyone is afraid of young men.
Why?
They move and change so quickly. They enjoy making people afraid.
Why?
To impress them, especially to impress girls.
Yes, Sister Jane reacts exactly that way.
And you, does he not frighten you?
Oh no, he is to me. In him, I see myself. I know myself better.
So, a kind of mirror then.
Yes, Mother, excellent. A mirror.
Mirrors do distort, my dear.
But he completes me, and I complete him. We even complete each other's sentences in our notebook.
Look, Mary, I have outlined a list of readings for you. Your father should have all of these books.
Yes, he does, but I cannot read the Greek, Shelley.
Not yet, Mary, but soon you shall. Very soon, my little My. We shall teach you Latin and Greek, my lovely muse, and you shall teach me beauty. We will study the wide world together and teach them all to love as we love. Can we not, Mary? Let us drive away all the ugliness and raise this sad old world up to our ideals. We can do that together, Mary. Or let us at least leave the world a better place than we have found it. If we only dream big enough, Mary, we can create that dream. We can people the future with free men and women. Oh, are you my mother?
You are a patchwork.
Are you my parent?
You are my nightmare.
But you created me.
You were visited upon me.
Why have you given me no name?
But I have. I have named you the monster.
Monster is not a name.
Oh, yes, it is, and a most common name.
What does that mean? Patchwork?
It means that you are stitched together from many parts.
Dead parts.
Yes and no.
How can dead be yes and no?
Oh, dear monster, most of us are dead in part.
Dear monster.
Dear indeed.
Then how can you say, what terrified me will terrify others? Yes, I know your mind.
Of course, you come from within my mind.
So you are my creator.
Did I create you? I found you, half asleep, half awake. I found you before my eyes watching me.
Where did you find me?
At Lake Geneva, on a cold night, in a dreamy darkness.
Are you cold, Mrs. Shelley?
I was thinking of the monster from my story.
Ah, a daydream of a nightmare.
Well put, Mr. Rothwell. He comes to me sometimes, uninvited, almost as he did on that first night when he seemed to hover over my bed while I was half asleep.
When you had the ghost story contest at Lake Geneva. Forgive me, but your expression has changed. I believe that after this sitting, we will have enough of an image for you to look at and see how the portrait is developing.
No need. Wait, am I expected to see whether my eyes look sufficiently bright?
Of course. And whether I have made your cheeks sufficiently rosy also. Would you consider telling me about that ghost story contest?
But Mr. Rothwell, clearly you know about it already.
Well, not from you, only from the senseless gossip's versions, nearly as strange as your monster story. Besides, that way you can sit undistracted without being bored while you tell me.
Bored? Nothing about that time was boring.
But now?
Sometimes now I do feel that I am alone, with nothing to do worth doing, the last of my kind.
The last of your kind?
That summer on Lake Geneva, that was the year my life began, really. The same year as my monster story. Hardly 2 decades ago, yet it feels like 2 centuries.
Yes, 20 years ago, I was a child in a different country.
The treasures of my youth lie buried. How we change, foolishly presuming that we understand. But nature is not always forgiving. That was the year with no summer, you know, 1816.
I was still at school then.
Endless rain and endless cold. So cold. Monstrous times. Farmers starving, snow in June. Napoleon was still much on our minds. But people were talking of only 2 things, really. The waltz, the scandalous new dance, and Byron. Lord Byron was the talk of Europe and the Americas, too. All the young men wanted to be Byron. All the women wanted him, especially my sister. All except my Shelley and me. And we had him almost all to ourselves. 5 of us were there, the whole cold summer. Shelley and me, Byron and his young doctor, and Sister Jane, who was now calling herself Claire. Claire had tricked all of us. Shelley wanted to go to Italy, which we both loved, but Claire had insisted.
If we go to Geneva, we can meet the famous Lord Byron. Meanwhile, I had already written to Byron saying that if he came to Geneva, he could meet young Shelley and Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter.
And he came. Every day, Shelley and Byron would sail and talk, and every night we all huddled round the fire, talking and reading and taking Polidori's strange medicines.
Polidori?
That poor boy also wanted to be Lord Byron, who just used him. Dr. John Polidori was forever bursting in and out of the room with another restorative for us to drink, which chiefly served to keep LB up all night and talking endlessly.
LB?
Lord Byron. We all had nicknames. Byron had a ridiculous horse and carriage built, an exact replica of Napoleon's. Instead of the initial N on the door, Byron had his own initials painted on. LB. He laughed at it himself, but Claire would not stand for ridicule of her Byron, and she began to call him
Albert. A genius may choose his own name, don't you think?
And did you have a nickname?
Several. Byron called poor Polidori Polly Dolly.
And Jane became Claire?
She kept changing it. She could not abide being plain Jane Claremont.
And she was she not? That is...
Byron's lover, mostly in her mind. He avoided her quite successfully.
But wasn't there a child?
Yes. Claire's poor, sweet Allegra.
But the ghost story?
Yes. One rainy night, LB was reading to us horrid German stories from a book, Phantasmagoriana, when he suddenly announced that we must all write ghost stories and judge which was best. Byron and Shelley both produced fragments and quickly discarded them. Polidori wrote a nasty little tale about a vampire.
Vampire?
A seductive, blood-sucking demon, a nobleman, who uses others to stay young. The vampire was clearly a picture of Byron at his worst. For me, the contest was an uncomfortable trial. I so badly wanted to show that I could be, that I was truly the daughter of Godwin and Wollstonecraft. But for days, nothing came to me. They would ask me every day. Even Claire had to start on some miserable plot.
Oh, Mary, it was only a game.
Then, finally, one night, as I lay half awake, half asleep, I saw standing over me a giant creature, so grotesque. His eyes were dun-colored, his skin was yellow, his fingernails black. I was terrified. And I had my story. What horrified me would horrify others. And when I told my monster tale, Shelley especially insisted that I must expand my little story. And so I did.
I must ask you, what is a monster?
I should say a creature that is unusually evil. Also, a creature enormously large, or possibly a creature so strange as to cause fear.
Is Lord Byron a monster then?
LB? I think not. He causes more desire than fear. But he is a devil.
Claremont then?
Tempt me not, Satan.
Is Percy Bysshe Shelley a monster?
He certainly twists our fathers into fury. No, my sweet, generous Shelley has no evil in him. He is my angel.
Is he your Frankenstein?
Don't be impertinent.
Am I real?
Are you real compared to whom?
Am I real as you are real?
Yes, my monster, you are a part of me, and I am a part of you. You may be more real than I.
How could I?
The child may outlive the sire.
I am the child then.
You are a kind of, my brainchild, but a kind of growing, waking dream. I have no clear word for you except my monster. I cannot explain.
Then who is Frankenstein? Is he real?
He is the young man of my imagination who created you.
From parts?
From body parts.
Patchwork?
Yes.
He is a resurrection man.
How do you know that word?
I know your mind. He is a fool.
Yes, in many ways a fool.
Is he you?
Partly.
Is he Percy Bysshe Shelley? Does Percy Bysshe Shelley know that he is Frankenstein?
Part Frankenstein.
Your book. You gave it his name, but is it not my story?
No, it is my story.
Are you afraid of me?
No,
Are you ashamed of me?
I think not.
Is Percy Bysshe Shelley ashamed of me?
I believe he is delighted by you.
Does he believe that Frankenstein is his story?
Possibly.
Is Percy Bysshe Shelley ashamed of himself?
Never.
Mama does not like you sneaking off to Wollstonecraft's moldy grave with Percy Shelley. She says it's morbid.
Oh, Jane, must you run to her with everything? You're just jealous of us. Shelley says he loves me.
Oh, bother. He says the same to me. And you are to call me Clara.
He does not, Jane Claremont.
Well, but he acts as though he does.
He says he will shoot himself if I will not go with him to Europe. He said it twice. He showed me his pistol.
You may have your Shelley. I will have George Gordon, Lord Byron.
You don't even know him.
You know we saw each other at the theater.
We were not introduced.
I will introduce myself. I will know him soon enough. And if you go to France with Shelley, I am going too.
You?
Yes. And if not, I will tell Mama that you plan to escape. Anyway, you need me.
How could we need you?
I have French and you have not.
But I have Shelley and you have not.
We shall see.
And I have Latin. Mother, I have a fear about Shelley.
Yes, my dear.
He loves me, I know, as well as I love him, but...
Yes?
He has loved another before me.
Yes.
She is gone now, poor Harriet. He was married, though she was not worthy of him.
Not worthy? Why?
When she died, she was carrying another man's child.
Oh, Mary. Mary only she?
What?
Had you not carried two of his?
But that's different.
So you say. But why did she die?
She drowned herself. She did not leave an explanation.
Mary, did she not die for love? For love of your Shelley?
Possibly.
Would you not die for Shelley?
I would.
Would he die for you?
Oh, yes. He threatened to if I would not be with him.
And the child?
How do you mean?
Would he die for your children? Is that a difficult question? Does he love his children?
Of course.
Of course. So you think the father will die for the child then?
Oh, Mother. Shelley and Byron were on fire. Oh, what I learned listening to their crackling conversations. And not my parents. They were my own friends. For Shelley, new ideas were everything. To Byron, everything was his. He seemed to be everywhere, and a strange world surrounded them. Across the lake, a hotel had set up a telescope for people to watch us. The hotel keeper named us the League of Incest. They wanted to see us do monstrous things. Just imagine. And I with baby Wilmouse, not 6 months old. But Shelley and LB, so far above this world, they were an angel and a devil in a philosophical joust. I have never known their match. We were like children listening. In fact, people have been asking me ever since how a mere girl could write such a story.
Yes, I have heard that question. But I wonder, Mrs. Shelley, if you ever were a mere girl.
I certainly was once a little girl. Shall I tell you my Ancient Mariner story, Mr. Painter?
Is it much like Coleridge's poem of the Ancient Mariner?
It is the story of Coleridge, reading from his reworked manuscript of the famous Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The lonely mariner and his albatross thrilled me to my core. After my papa, Mr. Coleridge was the first man I ever admired. Father's study was a kind of philosopher's academy. Great minds came to visit, wild and revolutionary. The publisher arrested for his publications William Blake, who illustrated Mother's books. He would talk of her and stare at me. Strange, deep men, looking hunted. Aaron Burr from America was like that. They would wake me, reading and arguing down in Father's room. I would creep down the stairs to listen. But the best of them all was Mr. Coleridge, and oh, the night he read his Ancient Mariner, the deep music of his voice. All his coughing, it simply stopped as soon as he began to read. No hesitating or hurry, only the stately concert of melody and idea. Standing there, with my mother looking down from above, the fireplace all aglow, Mr. Coleridge read, "Alone, alone."
All alone.
Alone.
Alone on the wide, wide sea.
And the Ancient Mariner, having killed the beautiful albatross, is haunted by a fantastic spectre ship. It looks like a skeleton in the sunset.
Are those her ribs through which the sun did peer as through a grate? And is that woman all her crew? Is that death? And are there two? Is death that woman's mate?
Imagine death and death's bride.
His bones were black with many a crack, all black and bare, I ween. Jet black and bare, save where with rust of mouldy damps and charnel crust they're patched with purple and green. Her lips are red, her looks are free, her locks are yellow as gold. Her skin is as white as leprosy. The nightmare, life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold.
Listening to the mariner, the wedding guest is transfixed. But I was not the only one awakened by those wild men. Mrs. Godwin, always concerned for the girls, swept into the room and interrupted.
You men! What are you playing at? Oh, look at this girl. You snatched her silly. How could you? She'll catch her death. Go back up to bed.
So, you see, Monsieur Painter, I was a little girl once and had my own adventures.
Yes, Mrs. Shelley, I do see what you mean. And how old were you when you hid behind the furniture to listen to those men talking?
9 years old, perhaps?
And that woman, she was...
Jane Claremont's mother, my stepmother, Mrs. Godwin.
Yes, I think I am beginning to understand.
But finally, my Shelley came and saved me.
Then roaring tiger-like upon the shore, turning, sighs to recapitulate once more.
Shelley, no, not again.
What's wrong, Mary?
You must stop throwing poems into the sea, Shelley. You're not shipwrecked on an island.
It's just a little poem, Mary. If it drowns, we can simply write another.
But think what might be lost, Shelley. Have you no respect for the words?
The idea, Mary. Love the idea.
His words came so easily. He'd throw poems into the waves, even put them into hot air balloons. You know the sonnet, Ozymandias, the one about the pharaoh? It hardly took him an hour. And he only wrote it to better a friend who had already written a sonnet on the subject. No respect for the words. So, shall we get to work? Another chapter.
Everyone is simpler to edit, my dear.
Oh, that's how you spell enigma.
I doubt this poem is worth keeping Pexy.
Nevertheless.
Soon I must go find a publisher for your strange tale.
I wonder whether you will be able.
Mark my word, you will make quite a splash. Mother, did people really think this strange tale would be the great book of the age?
What book, son?
Goethe's Sorrows of Werther.
I doubt that any little romance could become the book of the age.
Surely young people didn't actually shoot themselves for unrequited love, as in this book.
So they say. I am proud of my heart alone. It is the sole source of everything.
You have read it.
Of course, everybody read it, especially girls, partly because we were told not to.
But not father.
Oh yes, that is his copy. But those were different times, my dear. When I was a little girl, I firmly believed my parents between them had written the great books of the age. The vindication of the rights of woman and political justice, fierce, noble ideals. Revolution was alive when your grandparents were young. How could that be equaled by something called the sufferings of young Werther?
I thought it was the sorrows of young Werther.
In German, die Leiden is the sufferings. Bad translation is bad judgment, dear. What I read and reread was my mother's book. I carried it with me everywhere. And young men would come calling just to meet your grandfather.
And that's how you met father.
Yes, we were so young. At 20, I believe you were older than your father ever was.
How was he young?
In some ways, he was like Werther.
Father was?
Danger meant nothing to Shelley. He had no respect for death. Ruthless, really. Cruel.
How do you mean?
He was so honest, my Shelley. He was perfect youth. Justice to be done. We will go to Ireland and free the entire nation. The poor are everywhere. Give them shoes. Give them our food. Love must be open and generous. Freely given to all.
You miss him still.
Oh yes, I was merely a girl when I met him.
And then you both went to Lake Geneva with Byron and then the ghost story contest.
Yes, dear, at Lake Geneva. And my story. You know, Percy, the monster in my novel also read Goethe's book. He felt that he was like young Werther.
The monster? But he was not in love with any woman, nor would any woman have had him.
He wanted love. He wanted a mate. But he was rejected by all, and he felt utterly alone.
Young Werther understood one thing quite well.
What do you mean?
Suffering is for the living. And you are correct about the title.
Yes?
Dying is a sorrow, but only the living keep on suffering. But this son is very unlike the father.
He is a good boy. He has had no father to fight against.
But he has a mother.
I worry what will become of him.
Not what will become of you.
I will make a way.
A writing woman with no man.
I will make my way.
This son, the one with no father to fight, is he content?
He is thoughtful, not bold, and quiet. And he is very careful.
Not ambitious for adventure.
Oh no. Remember the blue grotto in the sea at Capri, Shelley? Half-hidden cave of water all aglow from underneath. Approachable only at morning when the day was all sun and safe. I imagined our life would be like that, everything in some silver glow. I can only remember her now, that 18-year-old girl's dream of love, impossible beauties, ethereal light coming up into anything. A few mysterious hours of bliss, too fine to stay, too dangerous to stay inside. No screaming, no family illnesses, or no housekeeping, no horrid small deaths. I dreamed. Serenities of poetry, I suppose. Yes, glowing, ethereal hours. When I was young, a life like that blue grotto.
Well, Mistress Mai, our little schooner progresses splendidly. With the new sails and the added extension to the stern, I venture that we could give Lord Byron's new boat a fair race. Edward and I will soon let her loose for a good trial when we sail down to meet the hunts.
I wish you would stay with us, Shelley. We need you here.
What? Would you have the hunts arrive with no one to meet them or help them?
You could help us more than them if you stayed.
What help do we need, Pexy?
You know I am unwell, and with all these children, this place, it's bedlam. And now Claire again, too, who must be comforted over lost Allegra.
Is Sister Claire the problem, then?
Shelley, please.
What, then? Your father? I can hold him at bay easily enough.
Even Edward's Jane does not like that boat of yours.
Oh, she only sides with you to spite the men.
Really? Would she do that?
I will sail the Ariel flying down the coast to Leghorn, and we will be back within the week.
But
what, Pexy? Mary, what is it?
Will you then publish your poems in your new magazine?
What? Which ones? What do you mean?
The new lyrics you have been writing.
Wait, you mean the poems I have given to Edward to read to Jane, to his own wife?
I know how to read your poetry, Shelley.
I suppose you would be pleased enough if Edward read those poems to you. You talk to him more than you talk to me these days.
He listens.
So tell me, what would you have me do? Shall we throw away the poems?
Shelley, please, let's not argue.
Just tell me what you want. You want me to listen? I'm listening.
Please stay.
I shall never leave you, Mother.
Dear son, what a blessing you are, my great comfort, so real and steady. Now, shall we find you a good wife? Don't scoff, son. The world needs good fathers and good wives.
Oh. Do not talk to me of wives, no more. I have known too many.
Indeed, LB, indeed you have.
And you, Mistress Mary, why have you never taken any husbands?
I have felt no need, sir, beyond the one.
And what are your needs, good Mary?
I would be a good mother and a good writer.
I hear no great passion in such talk, Mrs. Shelley.
If passions do not flash like lightning, my lord, can they not be great, nevertheless?
Oh, Mary, you are truly the only blue stocking I have ever admired.
And I have always prized our friendship, my Lord Byron.
Whew. Cool and prescribed as ever.
The transcriptions are almost complete.
They are excellent, as always, Mary. Do you not consider being a poet yourself? I know you have fires within, no matter how deep you may choose to keep them.
I have found, LB, that I prefer to write entire lives. My novels are my pleasure. Even preparing my lives of the literary and scientific men is pleasant for me. And I am good at such work. They have a kind of poetry too, I believe.
Indeed? I suppose. Though most lives lack sufficient fire, I would say. Unless, Mary, you might choose to write my life.
I have already created the life story of one devil, my lord, and that has caused me grief enough.
What about your biography of the angelic Shelley, then?
Sir Timothy still blocks me. I can understand his objection to a boy's political rebellions, but when the grown son proves to have a genius, is he angry out of habit?
The old man is only a baronet, dearie. The smaller the dignity, the tighter the grip.
Wise words, my lord Baron.
But the question for you, my stoic Mistress Mary, how to turn the boy's rebellion into a manly revolution? More important to me, however, is that you have just said you have already created the life of one devil. As if one devil were enough. How now, Mary? You have called me a monster like your pieced-together giant?
I said devil, not monster. Nor was Frankenstein's monster completely devilish. His intentions began as purely as any. We are all of us turned monster, are we not? By ourselves?
I would battle the entire army of Turks before I would debate with you, Mrs. Shelley. Now I can see what a terror it must have been to debate your mother.
Mother, I still have this question, this terrible question to ask of you.
Yes, Mary, as always.
Did I murder you?
A newborn child cannot do murder, Mary. Surely you understand that.
I do, but if not for my being born.
What fault could you have? Why, you could also say, if not for men and women having babies, which is to say, if not for love and death.
Even so, I feel that I must be a monster.
Monsters are made, my child. Am I a monster for making you?
Mother, please.
I was called a monster before you were ever born. Called a hyena. And for what? For daring to write a book.
Mother, I have been thinking about that.
Good.
Your vindication of the rights of woman.
Yes.
That a woman can sire a thought.
Go on.
That a sire is a creator, not male or female, a human who plants a seed.
Yes.
That I shall be sire of Shelley's poetry as he was the sire of my Frankenstein.
People would call this hysteria, my dear.
I think not, and I care not. I have been thinking that muse may be the same as sire.
Go on.
Muse. Sire. Spirit.
You are very tired, Mary.
Exhausted, mother. Spent.
Sweet Mary, monster sire. Shall I give you a secret to ponder?
Please.
Remember the angel with the fiery sword guarding the gates of Eden from Adam and Eve?
Yes.
Eden was heaven on earth, Mary. Right here on earth.
Yes. Go on.
An angel guarded the gates, Mary, not a demon. Fear is the barrier, and people will fear an angel as much as any demon.
Oh, Jane, how will we go on? I told them not to go. I know. I will try at least to do some work.
What?
If I don't do something, I may go mad.
But Mary, what can we do?
I think this is a bill, and another. We will bear up and help each other.
Without Edward, I don't know. Oh, and Mary, without our Shelley.
If I don't do something, I will die too. And we have the children to consider. Trelawney will continue to help us. And Byron, I think.
How can you do this? So cold. I need Edward.
This is from my father. Another of his horrid letters.
What? No, you mustn't. Shall I help read it for you and perhaps divide the pain?
Thank you, dear Jane. I can manage myself. You bear up.
You bear up better than could have been imagined, but appearances are not to be relied on. It would have been a great relief to me to have had a few lines from yourself. I learned the news on Sunday. I was in hope to have my doubts and fears removed by a letter from yourself on Monday. I entertain the same hope today, and again, disappointed. I shall hang in hope and fear on every post, knowing you cannot neglect me forever. All that I expressed about silence and not writing to you again is now put an end to. I thought it criminal to intrude on you forever the sorrows of an unfortunate old man. But you are now fallen to my own level. You are surrounded with adversity, and I shall no longer hold it sacrilege to trouble you with my adversities. We shall now truly sympathize, and whatever misfortune or ruin falls upon me, I shall lay it fully before you.
He says I may come home. He asks about money.
Oh, Mary, he is only being a foolish man. You should have never seen such a message. Shelley would have never let you.
What?
How can he talk to you that way?
He expects me to be stoic, the philosopher's daughter.
Then he expects too much.
Yes, he always has.
Would a parent ever willingly destroy a child?
I must say yes.
But why?
I may offer as an example Abraham among the Hebrews.
But Abraham did not destroy Isaac.
But he would have.
We are fools, then, to make much of the natural power of a progenitor's love.
Many and many a mother has died for love of a child, dear monster.
And fathers? Do they not decree the deaths of children?
I do not speak for fathers.
I must tell you, speaking of fathers, I remain confused about how I can be real. I have so many doubts and questions.
We all have doubts. I have answered your question so many times.
The question remains.
Well, so it does. I fear that you are becoming more real.
You have said that before.
Nonsense.
Not nonsense. Sense. Knotted and knotted again.
Nonsense and babble.
Shall I give you an example of knotted sense?
No.
Nevertheless. Proposition. That the grave robber is the Antichrist.
And the proof?
Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord. The resurrectionist disturbs their rest. Ergo, the resurrectionist steals the eternal rest that would be heavenly.
Your proposition is flawed, my monster, and very likely blasphemous.
Pardon, sire, but I am neither a Socrates nor a theologian, only the patched-together voice of a storyteller.
Ha! Only a storyteller.
And a lady storyteller to boot.
Lady storyteller. Do you deny me, Peter?
Et tu, Brute? Pardon, master, but in all these years I have rarely heard you laugh. Why must I be mute?
You are not mute. You speak. You have doubts.
But people think me mute.
They will not have you a thinker. They must have you a dumb animal. They are afraid of you.
That seems nonsense to me. How are they afraid of your imagination?
Ah, no, people are afraid of their imagination. They fear the human imagination. And you are out in the world now.
Ah, real. You have said more real than you.
Excellent, my good monster. You understand now that you can be real. The thought thinks. Something is happening to you, my monster. You are growing. Do you understand growing, becoming anew?
I'm not sure I do understand.
The idea is that you become a different you. I can give you an example that has been much on my mind.
I am listening.
I am told that trees have two kinds of wood within, heartwood and sapwood. The heartwood at the center of a tree is older, dark, and very hard. The new outer growth just beneath the bark is called sapwood.
Yes, continue.
Some trees become hollow. The heartwood dies, but the trees live on because the new sapwood alone can sustain the life. Is that not remarkable? A hollow tree can grow to great heights with new branches and bright leaves.
And that is the meaning.
Don't you see? The tree may live even though it dies. And heartwood, if it be harvested, is enormously strong. May we not say even resurrected? Is that not a worthy afterlife? To be turned into some noble work, useful in the world.
Harvested? Does it suffer?
What?
Does the tree suffer?
Trees do not suffer. No one knows.
I don't know why. She must always act so morbid and hurt. She was not so loving when Shelley was still alive and needed her. We lived together in Italy in the same house, and we could all see it. Shelley was so open to people, always thinking of others. He turned always to beauty. Mary was cold, complaining to my Edward about Shelley. She just drove him away. The poor man began writing poems to me. Poor Shelley did try. He actually saved her life. She would have bled to death. She was, had complications before, and there was no doctor available, so Shelley nursed her himself. And not even a month later, we lost him and Edward forever. Jane Williams said that Mary was heartless to Shelley. She didn't really understand him. He was always off in that little boat with Edward Williams just to get away from her. Jane was Shelley's muse. Even so, she cares deeply for Mary, and they often walk out together, but she says that Mary must not know these things. She's weak and morbid enough already.
Jane Williams, my closest friend, has proved false and treacherous. Miserable discovery. For years I have been devoted to her. Am I not a fool? Who can sustain the mortal sadness of such a discovery? Of such a tale of horror and despair? Not for worlds would I attempt to transfer the deathly blackness of my meditations to these pages. Writing, study, quiet. What was my sin? Why am I left so alone? Another ancient mariner, antique traveler.
Master, how are you alone?
I am hounded.
Dogged?
So, the monster does not know its creator entirely.
Do you laugh at me?
What have I gained? Nothing gets better. No one is saved.
Are you praying? Who would you save?
Maybe I am wicked.
Possibly, but you are not alone.
True. I have a son.
Yes.
Percy Florence eases my mind.
Of course, master. So, would you save yourself from death? Do you hope to live forever?
I am not such a fool.
Frankenstein was.
I am no precocious schoolboy angry at some university dons.
No? No? Are you not the most famous parent in Europe? A creator, the creator of...
I feel alone.
Oh, who would you have with you?
My Shelley.
Back from death?
Yes, from death. Why was he not afraid? Why did he never bother to swim? How could I save him if he would not be saved?
You know a way.
What? What way?
Piece him together.
Do you not believe that possible, Mrs. Shelley?
Excuse me, Richard, what?
I'm Mrs. Shelley. I did not mean to upset you.
No, Mr. Rothwell, please repeat the question.
I said that... I hesitate, madam. You seem so fiercely...
Richard, please continue.
I surmised, that is, that you have become more famous than your father or your mother.
But Shelley, a great poet enhances the meaning of the age, Richard.
Yes, madam.
He is not simply to disappear like Ozymandias.
No, madam.
His work will ring out. He carries forward the hope of humanity.
Yes.
Shelley loved light. On a tree, on a cloud, on the spray of a wave. No dark forces for him. Whom did he kill ever? He looked for love and found patches of light shining. So many others, for God, for country, dishonoring, destroying, but he was not afraid. My Shelley did not fear death itself. We can still have Shelley. We have his heart.
What?
History saves two kinds, Mr. Rothwell. Those who act and those who translate the actions. My Shelley, my mother, their words and deeds will continue. That is the great mark. Cruel Achilles is only a name. King Arthur is but a story. Percy Bysshe Shelley shall not soon pass away.
Nor will you, Miss Mary, if I may be so bold.
I? Why, Mr. Rothwell, I do believe you harbor some of your own intimidations of immortality.
Indeed, madam. Who does not?
Yes, I will not merely be that poor, lonely thing. I will comfort me with writing. White paper can be an excellent companion. Does the blank canvas work that way for you, Mr. Rothwell?
Blank canvas a companion? You are beyond me, madam. I try to paint well, and as always as well as I can, but I believe you mean something more. Perhaps we should rest. Come and see my poor image of who you might be, or, as you say, who you may become.
No, I do not need a rest. Let us complete this portrait, if we must have one.
I must tell you, you have ignored a kind of monster.
Then tell me.
One who tortures others for pleasure or advantage.
There's no saving us from such monsters.
Why must we be saved?
Most assuredly we must be.
Your assurance means little enough to me. You know, there is a cat for every mouse.
What does that mean?
You and I are much alike.
How so?
We are both alone.
All around me, my beloved die, my friends betray me.
I have no beloved. I have no friends.
A sole survivor.
No.
No?
The only one. Ever.
I am so lonely.
I am lonelier than you.
But you have me. Monster?
Tell me something. What is death?
Death? Death is the ending of life.
I have not died. You did not let me die.
You disappear into an icy, unlivable wasteland.
But I live on in your mind.
My mind will die.
Must I then die when your mind dies?
A curious question. How do you pose such a question?
Do you not keep alive the mind of Percy Bysshe Shelley?
What do you know of my Shelley's mind?
I do not know. I only ponder monsters.
Shelley was no monster.
Percy Patchwork Shelley.
Be gone!
Oh, now I am the Satan again.
I must say, I am confounded by your idea of history, Mrs. Shelley.
What do you mean, sir?
You said to me earlier that only two kinds of people make history.
Did I? Perhaps I have forgotten.
Ah, do you see, madam? That is part of what bothers me.
What did I say?
That history comes from doers and from people who write down what those people do.
Oh, yes, of course, I remember.
But may I presume you would include painters with your writers? That is, people who record the actions of the great, but perhaps in paint.
Yes, I understand. I do agree with you, sir.
Good. Then I must consider my own experience as a portrait painter. Does that seem reasonable?
Indeed, sir. I must add that we are being terribly Socratic for such an afternoon.
Forgive me if I am tiresome.
No, continue. I quite like the idea. Words and paint can both do civilizing work.
Excellent. Then, here's my thought, that people are not to be understood at a glance or in a moment. I must study them, I must take notes, as at sittings such as this one. And I try to see different points of view. I change my mind, I even forget.
And what do you conclude?
That we do not exactly record what the great do. We only save some moments that seem to us usable.
And we compose these moments into portraits. The eyes are the windows of the soul.
Yes, and I try to look in. But how much have I missed in any painting of a face? Not what the great have actually done, but only what I may imagine about them.
And even that can be lost or forgotten or misunderstood. Such talk filled the evenings of my childhood, and I believe I take your meaning. But perhaps by looking into the soul, your painter is also one of the doers amid the kings and conquerors. Imagining is also a kind of doing, yes?
I must agree, madam.
My question is, do you ever make people look more romantic than they are?
I must be paid, madam.
And can such reimagining save us in any way?
Let us hope, Mrs. Shelley. I do not know. I just try to paint something well enough that other people will want to see it too.
Excellent, Richard. Then people can see what I have been able to do.
Yes. I see now you are surely wrong about monsters.
Must you ever interrupt my attempts to think?
You believe that people improve, don't you?
I believe they should, yes.
Why do you?
Because we can learn.
Nonsense.
A monstrous thought.
I am a monster, and they are your thoughts. Regardless, I think you are wrong.
You think, do you?
I think you are only talking about hope.
I do hope, but I also do learn.
I think they are not the same. Do you really believe that if you can make people understand something that is foreign to them, that they are improved? That you can make people grow to love something? Shelley.
Yes.
But why?
It is another step forward. My parents taught people justice. I can make my husband teach people love.
You hope.
Daughters can learn as well as sons, wives, peasants, anyway.
But will they? Do they? Do they even want to?
We are right to hope.
Ah, yes. You are certainly wrong about monsters.
What then? What don't I understand?
You think you don't want monsters, but aren't you about to create another?
You confound me.
You confound yourself.
What a world the monster presumes to instruct the maker.
The maker will not listen to the monster.
I listen. From the beginning, I have been trying to listen.
Let us hope. Let us hope.
I declare that we are finished with our sitting here for this portrait of the famed Mary Shelley.
Please, Rothwell, I hesitate. I would still prefer not to put myself forward.
As you say yourself, we are pinned to the page or we disappear. But perhaps I may comfort you with this knowledge anyway, that I have no place to exhibit the portrait at this moment.
Very well. Let us see this outside view of yours. She looks to me somehow sad.
Ah, but she is actually smiling. Do you see? As the poet has told us, our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught.
Oh, he lives. You have been reading my Shelley.